If you're about moving to Dallas, Texas, and you don't know if you should rent or you should buy a house, well, a lot of people think that renting is cheaper. And what I'm gonna share with you is pretty shocking. And so today I want to share with you the pros and cons of renting and the pros and cons of buying a house. And make sure to stick to the very end because I'm going to show you 3 action steps on what you need to take in order to move to Dallas, Texas. So let's get right to it. So the first thing I want to share with you is why is this topic so important? And the reason why it's so important is because the Dallas market is booming. The real estate market here in Dallas is growing. And if you know, there are so many people moving here to Dallas. For example, they're moving from California, they're moving from Illinois, Chicago, they're moving from New York, they're moving from Washington. All these different states, they are moving here to Dallas, Texas. And so with this booming market here in Dallas, Texas, why is it booming? It's because a lot of companies are moving out here. And when companies move out here, what happens is the employees come with the companies, and that's what drives up these home prices. And so that's why we've seen in the past years, for the last decade or so, Dallas housing market just going up. And so this is a very important topic. So I want to talk about the pros and cons of renting, and then I want to talk about the pros and cons of buying a house. And then I want to share with you what my perspective is, if it's worth renting or if it's worth buying a house here in Dallas, Texas. So the very first pro of renting has to do with this low upfront cost. Now, let's say you don't have at least like $10,000, $20,000 saved up, then it's going to be hard, difficult to purchase a house. But let's say you have like a couple $1,000s that you can spare, then you can definitely rent a place because you have lower upfront costs. You probably need about a 1-month security deposit and also the very first month's rent. Really depends on the landlord. So that's a pro of renting. And so we get calls, texts, emails from people like you who want to move to Dallas, Texas. And if you're thinking of moving up to Dallas, Texas and you want to purchase a house, feel free to call, text, email us, whatever you prefer. We're happy to help you move to Dallas, Texas. The second pro of renting has to do with no maintenance responsibility. And this is a good thing because you don't have to take care of the house. Well, let me get that straight. You do have to take care of it because if you don't take care of the interior of the house or even the exterior, then the landlord's going to come after you and they're going to try to keep that security deposit, right? They don't want to give that back to tenants. So when my wife and I, before we purchased our own house, we used to rent an apartment in Uptown. It was before we had our baby. And so we were just kind of living the life in downtown, Uptown Dallas, kind of where all the entertainment is. Now, when we were living in the apartment, there were so many problems with our place. Now, the good thing about being a tenant is, like I said, no maintenance responsibility. But when you try to call the front office, you tell them, hey, can you fix this? Can you fix that? They're like, okay, because there were so many problems with our place. They couldn't come every single time as the time we had wanted. So they'd be like, okay, we'll be there tomorrow at this time, but they would never come at that time. And so we would wait throughout the whole day. And guess what? When no one was in the place, when my wife and I were out working, that's when they came. And then they had like access into the house and they would come into the house without us being there. And that didn't feel good because what if they took our belongings? What if they took whatever we had that were treasured inside our place? That didn't feel good. So this is why kind of that maintenance responsibility is very convenient. But sometimes landlords, if the place is in a terrible condition, then the landlords, you try to call them, they're going to give you a hard time. So we've experienced that before. So that can be a pro of renting, but it can also be a con of renting. And make sure to keep watching because I'm going to show you the 3 steps on what you need to do to make that real estate move to Dallas, Texas. Now, what are the cons of renting? The very first con of renting has to do with the increase of rent prices. Now, if you've been renting, you know that every year, the longer you stay in one place, they're going to increase the price, maybe by $100, $200, or $300 or so. Just really depends on the value of that home. And not just staying in one place, if you were to move around every like year or 2, you know that rent prices keep going up. The national average of rent prices increasing is about 6%. And so because of that, think about it. If you're constantly renting and you never really own a home 10, 20 years down the line, who knows how much rent prices are going to cost? And that's a really downside of renting because you're going to have that burden of like, let's say right now you're renting for $2,000 a month. Later, 5 years later, it'll be maybe $3,000 and then it'll go up to $4,000. And as you and I know, income never really goes up. And so we're always kind of just stuck with having to pay the increase of rent prices, increase of gas prices, increase of market, everything that we want to purchase, everything goes up except for our income. And so that's the problem with rent prices. So if you are renting, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The second con of renting has to do with you are building absolutely no equity. That is huge because think about it. As house prices go up, your rent prices go up, right? But the thing is, as houses prices go up, landlords are the ones who are gaining that extra money because they're building equity. Whereas you, if you are a tenant, you're not building any equity. There's a reason why landlords, they own homes and then they rent them out. They do it is because they've experienced the power of equity. And so if you are renting, you get absolutely no equity in that. Let's say, for example, you're renting a $300,000 property at, let's just say $3,000. And you're just constantly paying the rent. Later, when that house price goes up to $400,000, the landlord had just gained $100,000 equity, whereas you didn't gain absolutely anything while you were the one living in that place, paying off that rent, helping the landlord. And so this is a huge con, whereas you don't build any equity if you're renting. So not only do you not build equity, here's another problem is that you are renting, and every time you rent, none of it is going into your mortgage payment, your principal payment. It's going to the landlord's pocket. So let's say you're renting $2,000 a month. Every month, you're paying $2,000 a month. Multiply that by 12 months, you get $24,000. Multiply that by 10 years, you get $240,000. You just spent $240,000 in 10 years of renting. Well, actually, you know what? It's going to be more than $240,000 because every year rent price is going to go up, right? But let's just make it basic, simple math and say $240,000 that you just wasted in rent money. Not only did you lose out on your equity, you also wasted money in your rent, whereas that $240,000 could have gone into your house payment. That would have been so much better. And so that's kind of the downside of renting. The next con of renting has to do with limited customization. What am I talking about? Is that let's say you love interior design. Let's say you love building a house to make it look really nice. Now, you are limited in what you can do. Let's say, for example, your yard, you want to make it look really nice, but it's not your home. So why waste money? And so let's say, for example, you want a certain type of backyard. You can't really do much because it's not yours. Let's say inside your house, you want to get rid of this area, get rid of this wall, or you want to kind of change things up. You want to paint it in a different color. You don't have much leverage to be able to do what you want to do, because then the landlord might get you and say, why did you change it up even though it cost you money? And so there's going to be all those arguments, and you can't really do much because you're really only living there for about 1 or 2 years and then you're gone. And so whatever you spend time in kind of making that house look beautiful, the landlord gets to benefit and profit off of that. So that's where that limited customization is. So this is why if you own a home, you can do whatever you want to. You have the freedom to make your backyard look nice, your front yard look nice, the inside of your house, interior design, you can make it look really nice. You can change the flooring, you can change the backsplash of your kitchen, you can change your appliances, whatever you want to do. And so that kind of is a pro of purchasing a house versus renting a house. So we talked about the pros and the cons of renting. Now I want to share with you the pros and cons of buying a house. Now, if you're thinking of moving to Dallas, Texas, and you want to buy a house, then feel free to call, text, email us, whatever you prefer. We're happy to help you move to Dallas, Texas. And here are the pros and cons of buying a house. The very first pro of buying a house has to do with the equity. Like I said, let me give you an example. House prices here in Dallas have skyrocketed at least $100,000. So we've seen houses that were priced at $400,000 before COVID, pre-COVID, and now years down the line, we see house prices at $400,000 selling at like $550,000. That is the power of equity. So this is why, like I said, landlords, they love purchasing homes and renting them out. The reason is because they do get a little bit of money from if they were to purchase it at a very low price and rent it at a high price. They get very little money then, but what happens is they get equity. So people who've purchased homes pre-COVID at, let's say, $400,000, and now if they were to sell their house at $550,000, then they just profited a total of $150,000. And in a sense, that is kind of like free money, right? Of course, you have to manage your property as a landlord and take care of it whenever the tenant calls you and all that, but it's totally worth it. And so that is the power of equity. So let's say, for example, you were to purchase a house right now at $400,000, and let's say like 10 years down the line or 5 years down the line, it goes up little by little by little, and eventually you sell it at $600,000. Then you've obviously built that $200,000 equity. And so we know, historically speaking, statistically speaking, that in the past, house prices, they fluctuate, they go up and down, right? And we had that crash back in like 2008 or so. But at the end of the day, it eventually goes up, and that's kind of where homeowners and landlords really love that kind of profit. And this is why they will say, you know what, I will keep continually purchase homes because of that. So if you have yet to purchase a house, that is where you are losing out on, because 10 years down the line, when you want to purchase a house, then you might regret not purchasing a house today. And so I have people who call me, they have a difficult time trying to buy a house because of the past, and the past always gets to them. They're always thinking, man, you know, Daniel, if only I'd purchased a house like 10 years ago, I would have purchased it for like $200,000. Now it's like $400,000, and they regret it, and they just can't seem to move forward. And so that's kind of the con of not purchasing a house. But the pro is you build equity. The next pro of purchasing a house has to do with more of like a stable mortgage payment. Now, if you don't have a mortgage, then that's great. Then you only have to pay like the HOA, the property taxes, the insurance, whatever you have to pay for that. But for the most part, a lot of people, they do get a loan. Now, the downside of getting a loan is that a lot of it in the very beginning is going to go to your interest, not your principal. And so that's kind of where you have to understand this. And that's, for me as a realtor and a loan officer, I understand it. So I always tell my clients, if they don't have to get a loan, don't go with the loan. But they have to go with the loan, then make sure to pay off the amount as soon as possible, so they're not stuck with just constantly paying that interest. And so this is kind of the good side about buying a house, is that your mortgage payment is more of like stable. Let's say, for example, you're renting, like I said, 6% national average increase. So it's going to keep going up and up and up and up. So as mortgage payments, let's say, for example, you're paying $3,000 mortgage payments, including just everything like property tax, insurance, HOA, etc. You're paying $3,000. Now you're paying $3,000, and as time goes on, yes, it might go a little up just because property taxes might go up. The reason why property taxes go up is because your house value is going to go up. But once you pay off that mortgage payment, then your every month mortgage payment is going to go decrease so significantly because you don't have a mortgage anymore. All you got to pay is property tax, HOA, insurance, etc. So that's the benefit about purchasing a house, because you have more of like stability. No one likes instability when it comes with the economy. So when the economy is shaking up, a lot of people are kind of like hesitant to really make a move forward to do anything when it comes with like purchasing a house or a car, and they kind of like just wait to see what happens. And so this is why it's so important, is that when the economy is shaking, when it's unstable, having a house, knowing what your mortgage payment is, your fixed interest rate, that's definitely going to help you be able to pay that at a peaceful mind, so that you know that 2, 3 years, 5 years down the line, you're not having to pay more because of the rent increase. The next pro of purchasing a house has to do with tax benefits. Now, I'm not a licensed accountant. I am a loan officer, but not a licensed CPA. So I can't really give you too much information about this, but I do know that we get tax benefits of purchasing homes. What kind? Like, you get tax deductions from your mortgage interest that you paid. You also get it for property taxes as well. So I don't exactly know what goes into it, but what I do know is that at the end of the year, when it's time to do my taxes, I get my mortgage payment of that full year. I give it to my CPA. My CPA takes care of it, and whatever is tax deducted is a benefit. So you definitely get those tax benefits because you purchased a house. Now, the downside of purchasing homes has to do with its higher upfront costs. Now, we talked about how this is a pro for renting because you don't have to spend a lot of money upfront costs. All you got to pay is possibly the 1 month security deposit as well as the first month's rent. That depends again on the landlord, but that's kind of generally speaking how it usually works. And the landlord will do all they can to try to keep that security deposit if you mess anything up inside the house. But when it comes with purchasing a house, there are going to be a higher upfront cost. You're gonna have to pay closing costs, and that really ranges from how much your house value or the price of the house that you are buying for. If you're getting a loan, you got to pay some fees. There are a lot of other things that are kind of attached, like the title fees as well. So a lot of things add up when you eventually buy a house, upfront cost. So you need at least, like, let's just say a ballpark figure, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 saved up. Really, again, depends on how much of a property value you are purchasing. Now, if you need help with this, you're thinking about buying a house, feel free to call, text, email us, we're happy to help you move to Dallas, Texas. And so you are going to have these higher costs. So if you don't have this saved up and you want to buy a house, then I recommend you kind of just save up as fast as you can, and then talk to me when you're ready. We can definitely help you, give you a ballpark figure and kind of guide you through that. Me as a loan officer, I know what it's like having to save up money and how much you need. So we can definitely help you out with that. So you're gonna need some money in the beginning to be able to close on a property. Another con of purchasing a house is you got to maintain the house. This is really not something that you got to take lightly. I've seen people who have taken their house, maintaining their house, very like not a big deal. And so what they do is they just kind of let it be. And if you just let your house sit, then you're gonna have all these weeds growing in your house. You're gonna have foundation issues. You're gonna have HVAC issues. You're gonna have all these plumbing issues. So this is why you have to maintain your house. Me as a realtor, what I do for my clients is when they purchase a house, not from when they purchase a house from A to Z up until closing, do I help them? I help them with that. But whenever they have like questions about maintenance, or they need like, hey, I have a plumbing issue, or I need like a handyman to fix this, this is where my experience, I'm able to say, hey, you know what? You can try calling this person. Maybe this person can help. So I have a lot of kind of contacts for people who can definitely help with kind of maintaining your house. And just kind of from my experience of being a homeowner, I understand what we need to do with maintaining our house. So these are kind of the nuggets that I share with my clients throughout the time. So maintaining a house is very important. If you were to purchase it, it is a lot of work, but once you get the hang of it, not too bad. So the question is, how long are you going to stay in Dallas? That's my question to you. If you're gonna stay in Dallas for temporarily just 1, 2, or maybe 3 years, then my advice to you is you may be much better off renting. I had a client one time who came to me and said, Daniel, should I rent or buy? And I asked them, how long are you gonna stay? They said, maybe 1 or 2 years. I said, no, it's total waste of money because you're gonna have higher upfront costs. And so then when you buy a house and then when you sell your house, you're thinking equity is gonna build that much in 1, 2, or 3 years. Yes, if we had another COVID, then who knows, right? But generally speaking, statistically, historically speaking, no, that's not the case. So if you're only staying in Dallas for 1, 2, or 3 years, then I do not recommend it. But if you're staying here long-term, let's say 5 years, 10 years, you want your kids to be able to graduate elementary, middle school, and high school here in Dallas. You want to raise a family here. You want to possibly even like retire here. Let's say you're coming from a different state or overseas and you want to come here and just to retire, live here for about 5, 10, 20 years, who knows how long, then my recommendation is, of course, that would be an ideal time to buy a house, ideal reason to buy a house, because house prices, like I said, are going to most likely go up. That's historically speaking. And so that would be my very first advice. And the second advice is, okay, do you have that kind of money to be able to put down in the beginning? You need down payment, you need closing costs, and so you need quite a bit of money. And so you're gonna have to have that saved up. So I wanna share with you the 3 action steps that you need to take if you want to buy a house here in Dallas, Texas. So the very first step has to do with, are you gonna pay cash or do you need to get a loan? Now, why is this important? Because if you can pay cash, then not a problem. But if you need to get a loan, you can't just get a loan. Banks aren't just gonna give out loans. There are requirements in getting a loan, and not just requirements in getting a loan, also requirements in getting a certain amount of loan. This is very important because a lot of people, what they do is they start looking for homes. Let's say they have this dream house of like $700,000 and they want to get a $700,000 property, but then they can't get it because their loan, they can only get $500,000. And this is when people get the order incorrect. They start looking for a house and then they get a loan. No, the first step is to know how much of a loan you can get, how much of a property you can purchase. And that is where my expertise as a loan officer, we can definitely help you with this if you have any questions and you need to get that loan. So this is very important because you got to know how much of a loan you can get, and then you start looking for that kind of property value. So let's say you can get a $500,000 property value, then that's when you know, okay, you know what? I can look for houses $500,000 or below. That's the very first step. So once you know how much of a loan amount you can get, a property value you can purchase, the second step is to know what neighborhood, what area you want to live in. Now, why is this important? Because I can say, you know what? Carrollton is a great location. Plano is a great city. Frisco is amazing. McKinney, oh man, that is a great city that a lot of people move to. I can say all these suburbs, but really at the end of the day, every person, every group, every family, everyone is kind of different in what they need. So you can tell me, Daniel, I want to go into this kind of area. I want to go into this kind of, this is what I'm looking for. And I'll be like, hey, you know what? According to these websites, here are some great areas. So that's kind of where my expertise comes in that picture. So don't just be like, you know what? Okay, you know what? Daniel said Carrollton is a great city, so let's just move to Carrollton. It's not that way because everyone has different needs and different wants. So that's the second step, finding a great neighborhood. And then the third action step is to look at the houses in that neighborhood, look at what kind of houses fit your budget, and start looking at those photos, see what kind of is your style, what kind of house you want to buy, because again, everyone has their different house style. And so I can say, I love vaulted ceilings, but some people are like, no, I don't. I love natural light. I love a lot of windows. Some people are like, no, I don't like that. So everyone is different. So you can't just take my advice because everyone has that different style. And so because everyone has their different style, that just really depends. And as you tell me your style, then I can kind of help you with finding that perfect home for you. So now you know the difference about renting and about buying a house. And if you want to buy a house, feel free to call, text, email us, and we're happy to help you move to Dallas, Texas. If you like this video, click that like button. If you haven't done so, make sure to subscribe below. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.